Hello, I'm Kurma. Welcome to the Gourmet Vegetarian Cooking Video Encyclopedia. This edition, we're going to show you how to prepare all these delicious vegetable dishes. We've got sweet and sour vegetables with curd, potato guranga, eggplants and potatoes with curd, and baked tomatoes stuffed with rice and green peas. So, let's begin. Traditional Indian-style vegetarian cooking explores the 6 basic tastes, which are salty, sweet, sour, pungent, astringent, and bitter. The sweet and sour combination is very popular in all cuisines of the world. In Indian-style cooking, the sour taste is generally derived from tamarind. So this is tamarind in its rawest state. This is tamarind which has been dried, and this is tamarind concentrate. So this very sour, acid-like seasoning comes from these large, broad bean pods, which are actually the fruit of the tamarind tree. These have been dried a little, these skins, generally they're a little softer, but inside the pod you'll find this very sour, fleshy fruit. Now, you can't buy, generally speaking, tamarind in this form. The most convenient form is in the dried blocks. And however, because you see there's the pips and the pith which are mixed into the block, some people prefer to purchase the tamarind concentrate. Tamarind concentrate is a very sticky, black, viscous extract of tamarind which can be used straight out of the jar. However, I find that the pulp from the dried tamarind is more superior. So over here we have some tamarind, 6 ounces of tamarind, which has been chopped into little pieces and soaked in warm water for an hour or 2. Now you see it's all become loose, but we have to push it through a sieve to extract all the bits of stone and shell. So let's take it over here and push it through a colander. You have to be careful with tamarind because it can stain your clothes. There are different varieties of tamarind, by the way. There are brown tamarind and black tamarind. This is brown tamarind. There. Now all this thick material which is left in the colander, we're not going to use. So now our tamarind is ready to go for our mixed sweet and sour vegetable dish. Here's the sweet. We're going to use 1 pineapple which has been diced. We've also got 2 cups of diced curd, 2 plantains cut half rounds, 3 celery stalks diced, 3 zucchinis diced, 3 carrots cut on the bias and half cooked, and 4 tomatoes quartered. We've also got 1 cup of whey, 1 cup of brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of salt, and 2 tablespoons of ghee, a teaspoon of cumin seeds, 2 tablespoons of minced ginger, 2 small green fresh chilies that have been minced. These are hot ones. We've got half a teaspoon of black pepper, ground, 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida, 2 teaspoons of paprika, 2 teaspoons of coriander, and 2 teaspoons of mango powder. Mango powder is in fact dried green mangoes. They also add a very nice sour taste to your vegetables. So let's begin by adding our ghee into our pan, and we're going to first of all fry up our cumin seeds. And straight away we're going to add our ginger. This sweet and sour vegetable wouldn't be the same without ginger. Fresh green chilies. So actually this vegetable is simultaneously sweet and sour and hot. So add our crushed black peppers, asafoetida, fry it a little more. Now let's add our whey. This adds the bulk of the juice to of the vegetable. When you cook vegetables in whey, they tend to stay together nicely. They don't break up and go mushy. Also, let's throw in our tamarind pulp. Our pineapple, our carrots, our plantains, and mango powder, paprika, and coriander. Now this should be now stirred nicely, so all the spices and the juices and the vegetables are combined properly. And when that's done, let's bring it to the boil, then reduce it to a simmer, and we'll come back in 15 minutes. Well, it's been about 15 minutes now. Let's have a look at our vegetables. Oh yes, these are soft. Let's add our curds, our zucchinis, our celery, our tomatoes, our salt, our brown sugar, one lump or two, and let's stir it all in. This is a very popular vegetable for two reasons. One is because everybody likes sweet and sour taste, and also it's a very visually attractive looking vegetable dish. So after the vegetables are all stirred in, we should place a lid on top and come back in about 10 minutes time, and it should be ready to go. Well, it should be done by now. Here it is, sweet and sour mixed vegetables with curd. The humble potato has also been called the king of vegetables, and rightly so, I think, because there are over 250 different recipes that you can make out of potatoes alone. So this edition we're going to show you how to make potato goranga, which is one of my favorite potato casseroles. Potato casseroles are best made by using baking potatoes. Here we have some Idaho baking potatoes here, which have been sliced very thinly. In fact, over here we have about 8 or 10 potatoes which have been previously cooked and drained, and they've also been cooked till they're 3/4 done. Now, some of the other ingredients that we're going to use are 1/2 cup of melted butter. We've got 3 cups of sour cream. We've got 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/2 cup of water, 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida, 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary. This is being ground up in our spice grinder. 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1 tablespoon of ghee, and we're going to finish it off with 2 tablespoons of minced parsley. So firstly, to make our sauce that gets blended in with the potatoes, heat up some ghee and put in your asafoetida. The asafoetida just needs to be fried up a little bit, just till the aroma becomes noticeable. And let's dump in our water, our butter, parsley, and all the other ingredients, the black pepper, rosemary, paprika, salt, and turmeric. This turmeric gives it a very attractive golden colour, thus the name Gauranga. Gauranga means golden. And let's put in the sour cream at this stage. So let's blend this up. This is actually a visually very attractive casserole. Now that's done. Now let's get our pre-cooked potatoes and let's dump them in our big bowl here. Why, this is a big bowl. I could just about take my bath in there. And let's fold in our sauce. Like so. Let's fold it all together. And when it's well mixed, place it in a casserole dish. Pyrex casserole dishes are good for this sort of preparation. Let's make sure we get all the sour cream out of there. Don't fill up your casserole dish too full. In other words, find a dish which the casserole snugly fits in with a bit of space on top, because when it starts to boil and bubble, we don't want it overflowing in our oven. Smooth it out a little. And now we just have to bake it. Place your casserole in a preheated 400-degree oven on the top shelf. Set it for 30 minutes and come back in half an hour. Well, it's been about 30 minutes now. And here it is, hot and steaming potato Gauranga. Now here's a vegetable that's quick and easy to prepare. Eggplants with tomatoes and curd. Now when you're choosing your eggplants, you should choose a sample like this. Something which is very firm, which has a smooth skin, and which doesn't show any signs of withering. These eggplants would be considered large eggplants. So for our vegetable dish that we're preparing now, we require one large eggplant cut into 1-inch cubes. So first of all, cut off the end of the eggplant, and then I guess the easiest way to cut into 1-inch cubes will be to cut into 1-inch slices and then cut those slices into cubes. This way you have an evenness in your chunks. So we're going to take our eggplants over to the ghee here. This ghee is very hot because when you're deep frying eggplants, if the ghee isn't very hot, then they soak up too much of the ghee. So let's gently place the eggplant pieces in the ghee. Also, when you're deep frying eggplants, don't stir them around while they're cooking, otherwise you'll squeeze out some of the water content which is there inside the eggplant. Just let them fry on their own until they go golden brown. And if you're not quite sure whether they're done, take one small knife and prod them. And if they're done, the knife will easily sink into the piece of eggplant like this. So these eggplant cubes aren't done because the knife doesn't easily penetrate the cube. But when the knife easily slips into the cube of eggplant, then the eggplant is done. So we'll just give these another minute and they should be ready. Also, the question is sometimes asked, why don't you rub salt on your eggplants before you deep fry them? Because as you know, there are certain toxins which are there within the eggplant, And when you're cooking eggplants in other ways, you have to rub salt on them to extract those toxins. Well, the answer is because when you deep fry eggplants in oil or ghee, those toxins are automatically neutralized in the strong heat of the ghee, so there's no need to rub salt in beforehand. So these eggplant pieces are done. You see how the knife easily slips in, just like soft as butter. So we'll take these out of the ghee. They need, by the way, to be drained quite well because they drink up a little bit of ghee and we want to extract as much of that as possible. So there, the eggplants are done. So now, here are the other ingredients for the eggplant, tomato and curd dish. We've got 3 cups of tomatoes. These were peeled and pureed. And we have 3 cups of curd pieces. These pieces of curd were cut from one large chunk of curd, which was made by leaving the curd to sit in the colander for some duration of time. And then we took the curd and we sliced it into cubes. So let's take our curd, bring it over to the hot ghee here, and let's carefully deep fry it. Once again, the ghee should be very hot. One thing to remember when you're deep frying curd is don't touch it while it's in the ghee until it starts to rise to the surface. Otherwise it will stick to your utensil. And it's ready to go. Let's take it out, place it in our colander. And let's progress on. Now let's combine all the other ingredients. We've got half a teaspoon of minced fresh ginger root, half a teaspoon of minced chilies, 1.5 teaspoons of black mustard seeds. We've got a pinch of turmeric, 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida, a teaspoon of ground coriander, a teaspoon of garam masala, a teaspoon of brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Now let's add 2 tablespoons of ghee, straight out of the wok here, to our pan. And let's start by frying up our mustard seeds. When we add our mustard seeds, they're going to snap, crackle, and pop a little, so be careful. Mustard seeds are done when they start to crackle like this. Now let's put in our ginger. Stir it around. Fresh chilies. And our asafoetida. Tomato puree. And the remaining spices and salt. Combine well. And now we want to reduce our tomato puree for about 5 minutes on a medium flame, stirring often. So as you can see, our tomato sauce has reduced somewhat. It's time to add the other ingredients. Let's gently slide in our eggplants. And our curd. Now just cook on a gentle heat for another couple of minutes until all the curd has soaked up the juice from the tomatoes and it's ready to serve. Eggplants with tomatoes and curd. Tomatoes stuffed with rice and green peas is a very simple to prepare baked vegetable dish. You'll require 4 even-sized ripe tomatoes that are firm. And firstly, we'll need to slice off the tops of the tomatoes. Now, we're going to keep these lids. They're going to go back on top after you stuff them. So, firstly, take a spoon and scrape out the insides of the tomato, being careful not to puncture the skin. And if you keep going around like this, you'll end up with just the outer thick skin of the tomato, and you'll have the bowl here with the filling in. Careful not to puncture the tomato when you're scooping out. So now we've scooped all the insides out of our tomatoes, and we've caught them all in here in a bowl and a colander. Let's transfer this to our blender, because we're going to make a tomato sauce out of the insides of the tomatoes. Firstly, let's blend it all up. And then we're going to push it through our sieve here. We don't want all the seeds, but we just mainly want the juice. We're going to scoop out 1 spoonful of cooked down tomato sauce, and that's going to be placed inside the stuffed tomatoes. So over here we have a shallow pan. We've got 1 tablespoon of ghee. We've got 1/2 of a tablespoon of freshly minced ginger, and a teaspoon of turmeric. Fry that up momentarily. And add the tomato puree. Now we're going to reduce that for about 5 or 10 minutes until it's quite thick. Now while our sauce is reducing, I'm going to show you our rice stuffing. So here's our rice filling. This is a cup of basmati rice that has been cooked in 2 cups of water. We've added 1/3 of a cup of slivered almonds, a cup of green peas, 2 whole cardamom pods, 1 cinnamon stick, and 6 whole cloves. Oh, by the way, you'll find the method for cooking this rice in our rice edition. Now, as far as stuffing your tomatoes are concerned, you need to place a few spoonfuls of the cooked rice inside the shell of your tomato. You can pack it in quite tightly if you like, leaving just a little room on top to pour some of the sauce. And then we're going to place this in our casserole dish. And if you find any cinnamon sticks or cloves while you're stuffing, you can discard them. Well, our tomato sauce is done. It's reduced down to at least half volume. So now we're going to spoon it out on top of our rice. 1 good teaspoonful per tomato, like so. And now put the tops on. I hope you've saved the lids. I always have a hard time finding out which lid goes on top of which tomato, but it doesn't really matter as long as they're covered over. Oh, and also, we're going to place a lid on top of our Pyrex dish, and we're going to bake it in a preheated 350-degree oven on the top shelf for about 15 minutes. Well, it's been about 15 minutes now. Let's check our tomatoes. Yes, they're done. baked tomatoes stuffed with rice and green peas. Well, here we have it. Just a few of the many wonderful dishes you can prepare using vegetables. Happy eating!